We live in a world of extremes, extreme connection, but also extreme isolation. And every day we make choices whether to build our bond with others or break it down. We make choices whether to get closer or drift apart, whether to show love or take it away. And often we starve ourselves of the connection that we need so badly. So today I want to talk about the best kept secret for connection that the world doesn't know anything about. Let's have some fun together. My name's Brad, and I love talking about questions. I have questions. I know you have questions. We all have questions about our faith and about a God that can be really hard to understand at times. And I just so appreciate you watching. If you find this content really helpful, it would mean a lot to me if you'd share it. Or if you want to subscribe for content that'll come out in the future, that'd be really awesome. Let's dive in today. I want to talk about this idea that many people are calling the epidemic of loneliness in our country. They're saying this is particularly true for millennials like me and for Gen Z that's coming after me. But they're saying that the average person in the US has only one close friend. 1 in 4 people have no confidants at all, 0. 75% of people say they are totally unsatisfied with the friendships that they do have. And what else? This level of disconnection is dangerous to our health. Loneliness has been alleged to have the same impact on our life expectancy as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, with a risk factor that rivals excessive drinking or obesity. In addition, the lack of social connection can hasten cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, heart disease, depression, and suicide. They're saying that loneliness has been estimated to shorten a person's life by up to 15 years. Now listen, I know what you're thinking. That's really hard news to stomach today. Don't worry, there's a light in the darkness shining for us, because one of the studies said 88% of those who have daily in-person interactions with others say that their overall health and mental health is good, very good, or excellent. Now, here's what I'm saying. The bar is pretty low. It's not that hard for us to have a really high impact relationally on the people in our lives. Billy Joel said this quote one time, the musician Billy Joel. I love this quote. I also hate this quote, and you'll see why. He said, "I am, as I've said, merely competent, but in an age of incompetence, that makes me extraordinary." Now, what I love about that quote is we could transfer that to relationships and say today, we live in an age of relational incompetence in many ways. So if we can just be relationally competent, we can be extraordinary in our generation, and we can have a great impact on those around us. So here's what we're talking about today: relationships, friendships, connections. We need each other. We don't realize we are starving ourselves and the people around us of the connections that we need. And we don't realize it because relationships are hard work and we avoid it sometimes. They require authenticity, opening up, being honest. They demand intentionality, selflessness, and wisdom. But what I believe the best kept secret about connection is something you can find in the Bible in the Old Testament, this word berith. It means covenant. Now, the English language has no idea what to do with this word covenant. When you look it up, it means agreement or contract, but that's not really what the Bible is representing at all with this word berith. It's a covenant, an alliance of friendship, a pledge, a solemn pact. Now, here's the contrast. A contract is all about my wants. It's all about what I get out of the deal, right? And so when you draw up a contract, you're thinking more about protecting your own interests. But the difference between a contract and a covenant is that in a covenant, I'm not worried about myself or protecting myself. I'm thinking about what I can give. I'm worried about the connection. So a contract, I'm worried about what I get, but a covenant, I'm worried about what I can give to the person that I love. And a covenant is a calling. It's not something you give away or give up on easily. To look at this idea of covenant, we can look in our Old Testament in 1 Samuel and look at this relationship between David and Jonathan. This is the same David you might have heard about in the idea of David and Goliath. David also went on to become king in Israel. But before all that, he met this guy, Jonathan. And it says that there was an immediate bond in 1 Samuel 18, that there was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David, and Jonathan made a berith, a covenant, a solemn pact with David, because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. What does all that mean? It's kind of confusing. Why would Jonathan strip down and give his clothes to David? What's happening here is Jonathan is the prince. He's the son of King Saul at the time. David is not king yet, but Jonathan is saying, look, I know you weren't born in a royal line like I was, but I want to take all these elements of my royalty and give them to you because I want you to know that you are royal in my eyes. That's what you mean to me. Now, David and Jonathan's relationship had a lot of really great moments. We're not going to read them all. You can go study them if you want to in 1 Samuel. But what I want to say about their relationship is they continued to reevaluate and recommit themselves to this covenant that they had made with each other in different moments. And as Jonathan's father Saul began to become suspicious of David and chased him out into the countryside as a fugitive, and Jonathan went out to greet David and said, don't worry, I'm going to protect you. Don't worry, you're going to be king. I know you're going to be king, not me. And that's what God's doing. And that's awesome. Don't be afraid. Just be my friend. Just treat me with faithful love, and not just me, but my descendants. And they began to make this covenant and this friendship that impacted both of them so deeply. Now, the sad part of the story is that Jonathan and Saul were both killed in battle. David wept bitterly for his friend Jonathan, the Bible records. But David had made a covenant, made an impactful relationship with Jonathan that continued to impact David's life even after Jonathan was gone. And I think that's so key to look at in 2 Samuel 9. It says, after David was established as the new king, in 2 Samuel chapter 9, it says, one day David asked, is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Now here's the key here. At this time, if a new king came into power that wasn't part of the family line of the previous king, one of the first things the new king would do is say, are there any heirs to the throne that are a threat to me? Let's eliminate them. But that's not what David did. He remembered his promise to Jonathan that he would be faithful and love Jonathan's descendants. So he said, is there anyone in Saul's family still alive that I can show kindness to for Jonathan's sake? Sure enough, they find not just a descendant of Saul, one of Jonathan's own sons. His name is Mephibosheth. Say that 5 times fast and you'll have a good time. But they find Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth is afraid. He knows what's going on. He thinks he's about to get, cut out here. But actually, David calls him to the palace and says, don't worry, don't be afraid. I'm going to give you everything that belonged to your grandfather Saul. I'm going to make you rich, basically. And you're going to eat right here at me with the king's table. You're going to eat with me and my sons right here in the palace. And he basically adopted Mephibosheth as his own son. It was powerful. And here's what I would say, that God had decided to make David king long before this, but Jonathan's impact on David is what made him kingly, right? He was not just a king in title. He was a king in that he was a man worth following. He was a covenant-keeping man because of his connection with Jonathan. So a true covenant, I would say, is built on 3 things, and let me give them to you real quick. A true covenant is a bond built on selfless love. That's why Jonathan gave the elements of his own royalty to David. He wasn't concerned about what he could get. He was concerned about what he could give. He wasn't concerned about protecting himself. He wanted to protect their connection. So a bond that's built on selfless love. Number 2, a bond that's built on authenticity. This is what all good friendships have. Jonathan said to David, don't be afraid. You're going to be the king of Israel, not me. Can you imagine if David had to hide that from his friend Jonathan? It would have made a really dysfunctional friendship, but they had authenticity, and Jonathan made sure of it. I've said this before, friendship without authenticity is a one-way connection that feeds our wants, but never meets our needs. And that's why Brené Brown in her TED Talk on connection and shame said, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen and really seen. David didn't have many true friends. Even his own family, if you read about it in 1 Samuel, were not really good connections for him. But Jonathan saw him for who he really was and who he was destined to be. So a covenant is a bond built on selfless love, a bond built on authenticity, and finally, a bond that's built on faithfulness no matter what. It's what led David to say, I intend to show faithfulness and love to someone on Jonathan's behalf. I want to find someone so I can make right on this promise, even though Jonathan's not alive anymore and wouldn't know it if I kept that promise. I intend to keep this promise no matter what. Now, in closing, here's what we need to do. We need to acknowledge and recognize we need each other. Sometimes we starve each other of the connections that we need so much, but we need each other. We need each other. And here's the action step you need to take. If you want covenant relationships in your life, here's the key. Don't look for them. Stop looking for covenant relationships. Stop looking for friends that will meet your needs. And start becoming a covenant-keeping friend. If you start working on becoming that kind of friend, you will create that kind of friendship with someone else. You will attract to yourself covenant-keeping friends who will be faithful, selfless, and authentic with you. I hope this content has encouraged you. I hope it means a lot to you. And I hope it helps you think about your faith, your life, and even God, who at some times in our lives can be incredibly hard to figure out and understand. And if this content really meant a lot to you, I hope you'll share it. I hope you'll subscribe for more. There's going to be more content coming your way. Thank you so much for watching.